Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast.
Each episode, we invite extraordinary guests who are masters of their craft. They're innovators, entrepreneurs, and of course, motorcycle enthusiasts who have made their mark in the world.
They share their stories, insights, and hard-earned wisdom, giving you a front row seat to the strategies and experiences that shape their successes.
So sit back, grab a drink, and get ready for an exhilarating ride as we dive deep into the minds of these exceptional individuals.
Along the way, we'll uncover powerful strategies, gain fresh perspectives, and explore the limitless possibilities of what it takes to be an American mastermind. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast. I am your host, Topher Sheeler. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Adams.
What up, what up?
We got Alec Langdon up on the soundboard today. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a very, very special guest. We just got a little bit of the pre-roll here. I am super excited to have Adam Nugent from Burn Up on our show here this evening. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's an honor to be with both of you.
Absolutely. So you were just telling us, like, Burn Up is for men, okay, and the different principles, and you've got a unique coaching style. Can you keep going into that?
Yeah, and it's so Burn Up really is a newer venture for me. That's really come as a result of some pretty major transformational parts of my life, literally in every aspect of my life. And it's, all of us in life have failures, we have pain, we have setbacks, we have heartache. I mean, everybody has their own, oh shit moment, right? And sometimes it happens on a daily basis or a weekly basis, but we all have them. But we really have those really painful ones. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know what I'm going to do. And so, as I've been reflecting, we'll get into my story here, but on all of that, as I look back on every challenge I've been faced with, having, gone through divorce, having lost a tremendous amount of weight, having lost a business, having literally experienced major losses in literally every part of my life, if I can look back on all of those moments, as painful as they were in the moment, they were actually for my good. I was actually able to really transform or transmute the energy, the stories and everything around it and elevate my life. And it's not easy. And I truly believe that, like, every challenge that we are faced with are actually for our God. I think they're gifts from God. I think two of the greatest emotions that God's given us, whatever God is to you, is pain and fear. Mm-hmm. I think everything we want is on the other side of fear. And when I look at what success is or define success, or people that I look at, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be more like them. The difference between them or me, or the difference between them and anyone else, isn't necessarily, what they went, how they were raised, or school. I mean, all those things play a role into it. But to me, it's because they're willing to do scary shit. They're willing to put themselves out there. Successful people are willing to do things unsuccessful people aren't. And I believe the recipe for success, honestly, isn't that overcomplicated. We overcomplicate all that. But if we can get out of our own head and get out of our own way and simplify the process and lean into what scares us, magic's on the other side of it.
So how do you, and I'm asking for me, this is awesome stuff, the stuff that I need to hear. How do you lean into your fear?
Yeah. And let's be clear, when you're in it, it is
paralyzing.
Yeah. Frozen, right? To the point you can't even function. Here, just literally, I built a very successful award-winning investment firm, had a ton of money, and it's a very long story, but long story short, we set up a fund that, we hired an attorney to do the work and go through all the process. And long story short, the SEC came in and audited our firm, took issue with how the fund was structured. It was a nightmare. And it's easy for me to point a finger because there's other people that were responsible. But at the end of the day, it was my firm. I signed off on it. And ultimately, the buck stops with me. And it ended up costing my firm. I got a multi-million-dollar fine. The fund that investors were invested in lost a lot of money in the deal, people that I love and care about. And there was a story that was written that the way this all came out made me look like the biggest shyster on the planet, which doesn't accurately represent what happened, doesn't accurately represent who I am. And the pain of all of that with what other people think, and more importantly, just so much of my identity was tied to my company, right?
You were this business.
Oh, yeah. It was me. It was like the success of that was me. It was me. And I think we as men, for those of us that are entrepreneurs or have businesses, we tie our identity to that. We tie our identity to how much money we make. When I was married, in an unhealthy marriage, I ended up getting divorced about 6 years ago, but I didn't want to be at home because I didn't want to deal with what was going on there. I didn't know how to deal with it, frankly. And so every day felt like my balloon was getting blown up at work because I'm getting fulfillment. I'm helping people. I'm making money. I feel great. And then it's like every night I went home, the balloon burst, right? So I had a very unhealthy attachment to my company, more so maybe than others. And so to have that identity of who I was ripped away, taken away under the circumstances, what was extremely painful to the point I almost took my own life. I mean, I was suicidal, and I've always heard about, getting suicidal, having suicidal thoughts. And it's like, you don't until you're actually in it. Now I know what that feels like. And it is the scariest, most hopeless place to be, right? So your question, Rob, was how do you lean into it? In that moment, in those darkest moments where I'm literally telling myself I'm better off dead. Everyone in my life would be better off if I'm not here. It was the grace of God that kept me going, that there was this, I can go one more day. And it was the thought of my kids. It came down to my kids. I had convinced myself that everybody else would be okay, but my kids. And, I'm really open with my boys. Like, I have 4 sons. And I remember telling my son the story, and after I'd moved through all of this, and he just looked at me and goes, if you had done that, I'd be pissed. I'd be sad, of course, but I would be upset. I'd be pissed. And it was just this anger, like, don't you ever go there. And it's like, Dominic's his name. Like, Dom, trust me, dude, I'm not there anymore, but I was there, and I want to be really open with them. And so when you're in that,
can you imagine that anger? I'm just living that just for a second. That anger would be something he'd have to metabolize over the years, like forgiving someone for committing a crime against them at that level. And that's how he was defining it. You weren't doing it. You weren't killing yourself. You were taking away his father. And that would be something that Dom would have to.
Oh, the trauma and everything that would go with that.
Yeah.
One thing I hate, people have always said this, right? Because, of course, when you're not emotionally attached and you've never been there, you don't know.
Yeah.
I hate when people say, like, well, people that kill themselves, it's selfish.
So selfish.
It's so selfish. I mean, that is such an unempathetic way of viewing it, and a lack of literally understanding or wisdom, or frankly, it's ignorance.
It's ignorance. If that's a viable option that you're considering, how bad do things have to be? That's the way I always think about it. Like, if that is actually like, that seems like a reasonable choice right now, things have to be terrible.
Yeah.
Because no normal, person that's in there in the place of a vibration other than that lowest vibration is going to think that's even a good idea. And so, how bad does it have to be? And that's what people don't get. And I don't want to dwell on it too long, because this is just a small part of it. But we're talking about something it's a game changer. And at that moment, you had that shift.
And it didn't come all at once, right? It came over weeks and months with that. You
spent some time in this space.
I spent some time in this. So one of the things that I'm a huge advocate for that's really been life-changing for me is plant medicine. And so what had happened is I got deposed by the SEC. And in that process, I honestly didn't understand the severity of what I was looking at. I mean, I knew there were issues and challenges, but there were conflicts that were written in the documents that I wasn't even aware of. Again, I signed off on it. I didn't know, but I signed off on it nevertheless. And to me, it's like, don't tell me no. There's always a way, right? Life's full of pivots and challenges, and it's like, we're going to find a way. We're going to find a way. And there was an opportunity that came up right after I had actually deposed by the SEC, and I'm spinning. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. And there was an opportunity to sit with some plant medicine with ayahuasca. And I'm like, I'm going to get answers. I'm going to find a way, right? Because to me, it's what ayahuasca does more than anything is it takes your conscious and your subconscious and the divine. I think all plant medicines do this to a degree, and puts everything in alignment and pulls away all the bullshit, pulls away all the stories, right? So when we can't see something necessarily clear, we're going to get clarity. So in my head, I'm like, I got to find a way through this. So went into this, like, looking for answers and doing into it. And it was one of the most horrific, most painful nights of my life at the time. But all I saw was my business burning to the ground. And this was nearly a year before it happened. And the pain of watching it burn. And what it did is it showed all the parts of my, all the stories I had been telling myself, because why I did certain things, what I did. And it just kept pointing all these, what I call the shadow side of it, just kept really kind of speaking truth to me, right? And it's like realizing, like, oh my gosh, yes, there's other people that played a role into this, but so did I, and I played a role in this. And so painful. And just seeing again, right, my whole identity is tied to this. And I'm watching this I'm literally seeing, like, this is going to go away. You're done. But during that ceremony, as I saw all of that, there was a key phrase to me that was as if God was speaking to me, or my higher self, or whatever it was. But I heard it distinctly, and it said, All this is happening, but your rebirth will be epic. But your rebirth will be epic. That one sentence, because I was already in such a dark place, but that one sentence in the weeks and months preceding, that literally felt like years. Every day felt like a week. Every week felt like a month, and every month felt like a year. I mean, it was just, because again, there was nothing I could necessarily do. I was just at the mercy of so many things outside of me and not knowing what to do with it, and so many people and employees and clients, just super painful. But just that one sentence, but your rebirth will be epic, kept me going.
So ayahuasca is well known for being, they call it the death medicine. It's because your ego does die. And you have told us just now that your ego is tied directly to the value of the business, the value I bring to my employees and my investors and all these illusions of significance, I like to call them. And ayahuasca takes a magnifying glass and like shines it on this ego death, is what you witnessed, the death of the business. That would be terrifying. That would be absolutely terrifying. And then to live the next year in the realization of the very thing that you saw, just deconstructing your world. Now, when this started to happen, were you that 100 pounds heavier?
My weight loss journey had happened before that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd started that process just right kind of towards the end of my divorce, towards the end of my marriage, and the start of my divorce is where I really started to lean into that. But no, it was, again, right. And again, I just want to say this too, that ayahuasca, I mean, it's different for everybody. Everybody has a different experience. And there's I think ultimately what it is it's a journey back to yourself. I think plant medicine does that. It's a journey back home. It's a journey to see who you truly are at your core, to get back to the root, to get back to an alignment with whatever that happens to be. It's back to source, right? And sometimes getting back to source is painful, right? Yeah. Because they always say the truth hurts, right? And again, we all have stories that we tell ourselves. We move through the world based on, how we were raised, by beliefs, by religion, by whatever we've been taught, and we make decisions accordingly based upon our life experiences.
Sure.
Well, again, when you're in the medicine, it rips it all away. There are no stories. There are no, hey, my mom taught me this, or my dad taught me this, or my church leaders taught me. That's all gone. It just speaks to you like, nope, this is the real deal, right?
Yeah.
And so it's that journey back home. And so, again, that journey back home to me required some real peeling away. You mentioned ego death, right? And my experience is unique in the fact that, yes, I saw and experienced losing my business. That actually came to fruition. A lot of times when you're in the medicine, you can have an ego death. You can have other things. It doesn't necessarily mean someone's going to die or you're going to die. It's, it's the energetic connection, if you will. It's the energetic death. But I experienced a part of me dying. Part of my worth was tied to that. It's what I provided. I mean, it was, and so much of the message in medicine and just in life in general, and as I lean into this, is like, no, I'm not my business. I'm not my money. I'm not my relationship. I'm a whole person on my own. I'm imperfect like everybody else. And men especially, right? We want to hide from that. We want to, move away from that. I mean, we're all in the business world. All of us have gone to a networking meeting, right? We walk into a room and it's like, it's a bunch of dudes that's in there, and it's like, who's got the biggest dick? Who's driving the nicest car? Who's making the most? It's just showboating, right? And it's everybody's trying to like see how good I am. But the reality is, everybody in there has insecurities. Everybody in there has major issues and problems. But no one wants. Women are much better about it than we as men.
Oh yeah,
right. And it's like, what's real and what's not. And what I've learned is like, there's so much power in being vulnerable and being open and just sharing your shit, because we all have it. So it's like, everyone that's going around the room, trying to pretend, quote unquote, to be someone they're not. That guy over there's marriage is falling apart. That guy's broke. That guy's this, that guy's that. It's like, let's have a real talk.
Yeah.
Like I crave deep intimacy with men that want to be open and talk about real stuff, because it's the reality. And society hasn't given us, a safe place to do that. I mean, there's transition, things are happening, but generally speaking, it's not safe to talk about this stuff.
I think what's more is that as men, we suffer alone. I believe that I'm the only one that is having this problem. I'm the only one that's ever had this type of a business issue. I'm the only one that's struggling with addiction or obesity or money or my marriage. We all think that we're doing it by ourselves. And the more that I talk to men, and as far as men go, I'm pretty talkative. Like I like to.
What?
Yeah, I'm a talker. And I'm also, I do have my illusions that I want people to think I'm happy and successful. I want that. But for the most part, I try to be as authentic as possible. And in so doing, I've given other men this opportunity. And when we sat down for lunch the other day, I was amazed at this is not the Adam that I met. This is a different person that I met. And you just wanted to go right deep and talk about this is where I'm healing, and this is how it's happening, and this is the journey along the way. I love the idea that you're creating a space where men can go and safely, comfortably get to this mindset that it's okay. You have that addiction. I have that addiction. What are you doing? What's helping you? Or you're doing that. I've been doing that.
So I agree. I felt like I was alone. I isolated myself. I pulled away from people. Relationships that I had forever are gone now, right? Some of them needed to go away. Some of them didn't. But why, I guess a question I have for both of you is, why do you think that is the case? Why do we as men feel like we have to do this alone?
I often think that it's, and I don't know if it's so with Topher. Topher's a little bit of a younger, this generation. I'm a little bit older. I'm 53. And it feels to me like we were raised by, I want to call it like the John Wayne society of men. I can fix it. I got this. You put it on my shoulders. I can manage it. That's who my father was. And so the way that I was raised was in this world of like, they're managing their own shit. I don't need your help. I got this. The problem with that is that it doesn't work. It didn't work for them. As a young man growing up, I could see that it wasn't working for my dad. Like we as men need tribe. And so I don't know.
What's kind of crazy about that? I think it's this modern attack on masculinity that's the problem.
Tell me
Okay,
that.
because my grandfather, they had the Moose Club, they had the Elks Club, they had the bowling league, they had the this, that, and they hung out with each other.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason we started this. Where do you go to hang out with guys?
Anymore?
Anymore.
Church?
Church, and you're around all the kids and wives and whatnot, you're going to be real vulnerable in that space?
No, and you can't be at church either because we're
supposed to be
it's not a big dick contest, but it is I'm more righteous than you contest. Like I got 100% home teaching this month or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like it's a different type of flex. I'm more righteous. My family's more put together. My kid just went on a mission to Paraguay. That makes, your kid just got arrested. There's like this weird, you're right. That's not a space. But
I just think it's more of the digital space. People are working behind screens. They're working in cubicles now. You can pin that back to the 90s. And then the slow attack on masculinity. I think that guys, we used to work together, shoulder to shoulder.
yeah.
And so you would get a lot of that throughout the day. And by and large, people don't do that today.
Huh. And
So we have to manufacture places for men to be vulnerable, to express this stuff, to talk to one another.
or just to be. I don't want to even be vulnerable. I want to go throw the Frisbee with a buddy and talk about my kids or your kids or like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can't have this conversation with my wife. I can't have this conversation with my children.
Yeah.
And who else would I'm going to have it with? I think that's a really good point. We don't have bowling leagues
No.
and I think there are some men that do things that are involved, but as a whole,
They're
culture,
little cliques.
See,
They're little
I would even
cliques.
say when I hear you say like men working shoulder to shoulder, I'm picturing like,
on the
I don't
farm.
know, on a farm, like blue collar, right?
Yeah.
The boys together,
Make
doing
it a
stuff like
mind.
that, right? And of course, there, with technology and society, and like as we advance as an economy, I mean, obviously there's less and less of that because of technology and efficiencies, right? But I look at that. If you look at that pool of men, right, that are in that rubbing shoulders, I don't think they're just because they're together, they're opening up and sharing their feelings either. I mean, because again, I think society, we've been programmed, like you said, like to not share our feelings. I remember if I cried as a kid or even as a teenager, my dad would like,
Knock
get a
it
hold
off.
of yourself.
Yeah.
Like it's not okay to show emotions.
Yeah.
It's not okay. And of course there's a point to it. It's like with my kids, like I want my kids to be open. I want them to cry. I cry in front of my kids sometimes, and it's like, I want them to see all of me. Because I think we as kids, we put our dads on a pedestal. It's fascinating because, I started to work with my dad, and, my dad had a ton of reservation about me working with him. And he said something I'll never forget. He goes, "You're going to see another side of me. And I don't know if I'm ready for you to see that." I didn't know what that meant. When we started to work together, I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
Who's this man?
Superman, who I'd put on a pedestal, has his imperfections. He has his insecurity. I saw it all. I saw a completely different side of my father. And it like clicked years later. I'm like, I know what he was talking about. Like he didn't want to see this other side of him, right? That he could quote unquote hide in, or this work side, these insecurities are pushed away. I never saw that. I mean, I didn't recognize it as a kid.
Yeah.
And what I've tried to do because of that with my own children is I'm really open with them. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I don't care how many parenting books you read. I don't care how many kids you have. Like, it's on the job learning, and you're still learning.
Yeah.
And every one of my boys, I parent them differently because one message that resonates with one
Yeah.
doesn't resonate with the other.
Yeah. Take my phone away, Dad. I don't care. Where the other one, it destroys them.
Yeah,
Or, they're all different.
So it's like we're figuring it out as we go. And I have found, like, we are so close. We have such an incredible connection. It wasn't always like this. But we are so close because of the openness and the safety that we created. Like, you can say whatever you want. You can do whatever. I mean, there's consequences, but like, so let's just be honest and let's talk through things. And I wasn't always like that. I mentioned at the beginning, I went through a divorce, and it's like filled up at work, not wanting to come home. So I was there physically, but emotionally and mentally checked out on my kids
For a long time.
a long time. And of course, I'm insecure. I'm morbidly overweight. I feel like shit about how I feel about myself. My marriage isn't working. I mean, all these areas of my life at home, I didn't want to be there. I didn't feel like shit. I didn't know what to do with it. And I projected that onto my kids. So for years, my kids, as their father, got this ornery, irritable guy that was just checked out, and it took some real looking in the mirror and owning my shit and realizing that if I want things to change in my house, I have to change. I mean, that's the biggest thing with my message with men today is, look, it's so easy to point a finger. Trust me, with everything I went through, I can point a finger. That's the easy way. Blame, right? But if we can look ourselves in the mirror and own our shit, I truly believe we can have anything we want in life if we're willing to look at our own shortcomings, our own insecurities, and own it, and then make the adjustments and the changes necessary to move forward. Otherwise, I mean, you're going to be snagged. And if your relationship sucks, well, you're the common denominator in all of it.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing about ownership. What you're actually saying by taking extreme ownership is that you have the ability to do something about it.
There's something powerful about that. You go from that victim mentality, like, it's because she's a bitch. No, it's because I'm on my third wife, and the common denominator in all of those relationships has been the same.
What is that, Rob?
Rob. And once I realized then I could start working on fixing that. It's just some basic little things about assuming my own happiness and letting her work on her own happiness. And I'm not responsible for how you feel, and all these little lessons that I learned along the way. But at the end of it, it was, what's mine? What can I fix? What can I do better? If I can be a better Rob, then I can be a better husband, a better father. And then she'll meet me and usually exceed me. Women usually bring more to the party every time than we do. And so I come in at 97% and she shows up at 125, and it just is how it is. And so once I learned that and started taking responsibility, which I still have to do, that's my question that I'm going to keep on asking you, Adam, is how do you keep in this place? Because it's easy to get back into the illusion of, well, we're all good here, let's get back to work as normal.
Yeah. So I think it's you have to get curious, right? So again, I want to just say one thing and I'll answer this. Like, the truth is, like, when we're looking at ourselves, we're the solution. I mean, we're the problem to everything in our life. Of course, there's circumstances that are out of control, but ultimately we're the problem.
Yeah.
It's a mind fuck. But on the flip side of it, we're also the solution. And when you can look at every challenge and problem and actually reflect back on yourself and like, what am I doing or not doing that's serving me? Like, and what it takes slowing down. It takes becoming aware of your emotions, right? Because I've done so much work on myself on this, like, personal development thing over the last several years. And I'm getting better and better and better about realizing, like, wait a minute, this is me, and I can catch it sooner. I can get quicker versus going down into the pit of despair. I mean, ultimately, I think that's what leads to addiction, especially with men, is because the pain of facing ourselves is painful.
It's a buffer then.
It is. Well, and to me, addictions, there's something, we're out of alignment somewhere in our life and we don't want to deal with it. And again, our subconscious side of us is programmed to keep us safe. So if there's a part of us that wants to keep us safe, like, so for example, for most of my life, food was the drug, eating was the addiction, right? So in an unhealthy marriage, not knowing how to manage all this, all the stresses of life, food was my go-to. Like,
you're feeling stress, food.
Happy,
food. Angry, food.
It didn't matter what it was. It was always food. And I had moved out of my house. I moved into a new house. We're going through the divorce, and my ex-wife, which even before this podcast, we were just talking literally about why our marriage didn't work. And we're talking about marriage. I mean, we're in a great space. We're great co-parents. We're way better friends than we are husband and wife. But she called and she lit me up, and I don't even remember what it was about, But I was so triggered that I just started eating. I went into a trance because remember, that's my go-to. I didn't know what to do with the emotions. I didn't have the skill set or the tools to be able to manage them. So I just started eating. And then to make things worse, I DoorDashed even more food. So
while you were eating.
Oh yeah. So I'm like, I'm out. I still can't, emotions are still there. I don't know what to do with it.
I can still feel.
Yeah. Cause my go-to was I wanted the pain. I wanted it to go away. So food or alcohol or drugs or internet or porn or it doesn't matter. Everybody's addicted. I believe everybody's addicted to something.
Yeah.
Right. But in that moment, literally gorging myself to the point of uncontrollable crying. And I sat there and I told myself, I'm like, this isn't working. I can't, the pain of what I'm feeling right now far exceeds the unknown of actually starting to eat healthy and learning to manage my emotions.
Choosing your heart.
Yeah. And so but it took, and I don't think I'm unique in this, but it took me getting to rock bottom, literally physically, to like, okay, it's time to change. What I'm doing is not working. Yet in my head, all this time, I knew it wasn't working, but it was comfort. It was the norm. It's weird because I was never comfortable being nearly 350 pounds. I mean, I never was comfortable in that space.
Yeah.
Yet I found comfort in it because it was my norm. It was my baseline. So whatever our baseline is, right, wherever we're functioning today, and we all have baselines, right? We have baselines in our relationships. We have baselines, financially in every aspect of our life. So whatever that baseline is, that's the comfort, right? So our subconscious, that's the baseline. So when we want to elevate our lives, whatever that looks like. So if I want to lose weight, that's a form of elevation and taking care of my health. My subconscious, my default is like, nah, this is uncomfortable. We're not going there. This isn't normal. This doesn't feel right. And there's part of us that wants to pull us back down. Same thing with the relationship. My tendency in my marriage was to avoid. I don't want to deal with this. I didn't know how to deal with it in the first place. And it's like, I'm not getting what I want. So I'd rather just avoid, numb, and check out. Well, the truth is, it takes having harder conversations and working through stuff. And then all of a sudden, as you work through the hard, as you work through that uncomfortableness, all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, there's light on the other side of this. See, I don't believe light and dark are separate. I believe light's found in the dark. Of course, they're two different things. But if we really want to try and find true light, we want to truly up level and have literally transformational change in our life. That transformation is found in the dark. It just has to get dark enough. And unfortunately, most people want to stay in that. And it's just light enough. It's not too dark. And they get comfortable.
Right.
And they get complacent and they coast. Yet most people that are in that live a life of, I didn't do enough, a life of insecurities. I could have done this. And so they live a life of shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Even more, I think that's the beginning of a crisis. And the crisis is all of a sudden, how did I get to be 350 pounds? How am I married to this terrible person? How are my kids, like, I don't have a relationship with any of my kids. Like, you have this moment of like incredible clarity where you're like, how did I get here? And I think that's the midlife crisis, is living in this numbness until you realize you're in it. Because we're coasting so much, we're so comfortable. We're fish swimming in polluted water. We don't even know. And then we get into that clear stream and you look around for a second, you're like, whoa, like I have a choice here. I feel like I've been through this and I go through it again and again and again. And I work myself into this comfortable numbness or unconscious living. And then I come back to high intention and then back and forth and back and forth. That's what the medicine has done for me, is give me a consciousness of my frequency. Like, I am not connecting. I am not present. I am not centered right now. I'm playing the game. I'm pulling the levers, but I'm not doing the things that make me happy. And I think it's interesting that your journey, as you're making this becoming conscious of it, and you discover this unhealthy marriage, unhealthy body, maybe even unhealthy spiritually, and unhealthy relationship with your kids, all of it comes in at one time, and you have like this. It's a crisis, and I think a lot of men have had it or are on their way to it, or they just left it and they don't know what to do with themselves about it. It's happening a lot.
No, for sure. And I think I'm glad you brought this up too. What's coming to mind is like New Year's resolutions, right? We live our life a certain way, and then it's like all of a sudden January 1st, I'm going to eat, let's say I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to do all these things that I haven't been doing for, let's say, for 40 plus years, right? And all of a sudden in one day, I'm going to do it all. Yeah. And then, so the reality is when we set these goals out for ourselves, more often than not are unrealistic, right? And I think the most sexy, attractive quality that any man or woman can have is confidence. And the number one way to build confidence is to keep the commitments you make with yourselves. period.
Does that sound familiar?
That's a good one. Yeah.
You know, so for example, if I set out, I'm going to do these 10 things starting January 1st, and I do 10 of them day one, I'm like, oh my gosh, I did it. And then the next day it's like I did 9, you know, and all of a sudden, I think statistically 90% of people that had set New Year's resolutions by the end of January are already off the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and the problem is, it's like we're setting ourselves up to try to do too much too fast. So the what I have found, again, right, you mentioned crisis as far as kids and marriage and money, all the things. It's like if you try to tackle all that at once, more often than not, you're gonna lose, and you're gonna actually fall lower than you were before.
Right.
So it's picking one thing, and it's making micro changes that then have, you know, this macro effect. It's the ripple effect. So, you know, it starts with a little ripple, but before you know it, it's the 6-foot wave.
Yeah.
Once you start doing it and being consistent and making consistent daily micro changes in your life is how you do it. If you try to do it all at once, I'm telling you, more often than not, it doesn't work.
You'll lose. Have you read The Compound Effect?
Oh, yeah.
They go into that in such great detail, and the way that he lays it out in such a way that it just is these little tiny executions of success, just a little wins throughout the day. I love that book. It's been a really good one for me.
You know, real popular today is like, I mean, again, I've gained and lost enough weight over the years. I say this all the time. I could go on Oprah, right? I mean, literally, you know, 100-pound swings either way. And so, but I love a challenge, right? And I always like, oh, I can do this. Like 75 hard is really popular today, right?
Right.
I love it. I love the concept. I love everything around it. Anyone can do anything for 75 days, even as difficult as that happens to be. Then on the 76th day, there's this mentality. I watched a ton of people do it. The weight they lost, the muscle they've gained. I've seen this happen more often than not, that they actually go back to where they were before.
Or worse.
Right? And I was the king of that. It's like, oh, yeah, I have a destination. I'm training for this race. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I hit that goal. And then it's like, but I didn't make lifelong changes. I didn't make transformational behavioral changes. And I believe everything we want, whether it's money, relationships, physical, all of it, all comes down to the stories we're telling ourselves, and it's controlling the mind. The mind is, more often than not, for all of us, is on autopilot. And when you can get it off autopilot and live more of a conscious life versus an unconscious life, that's where magic happens. That's where the freedom to do everything you possibly want to do is getting your mind right.
Yeah. Yep. I believe that. We've talked in great detail at American Masterminds about how to create a successful morning to create a successful day. And it is about getting your mind right. It's about starting with gratitudes in the morning. It's about taking time and looking at what you want in your relationships. We have life accounts. I could show you that this is what I want from my marriage or from my business, and we visualize it and spend time seeing ourselves being successful in that. And then we step into the day in that character, ready to go. We've girded our loins, as it were, as they say locally, and we're ready for the battle. And I think that the mindset is the thing that's overlooked. And, you know, it's that whole like think, feel, do the results, and then it kind of goes back around and around. And it begins at the thoughts. And I love that that's where you took it to, because I know as you work with the Burn Up program, you spend a lot of time, I would imagine, in how do we get our head right. Can you give us some ideas on some things you talk about with men in this area? Yeah.
So I think, you brought this up. So I'm a huge advocate or believer, like how you start your day is how your day will go or your week will go. Right. And it's interesting. Again, you hear these social media influencers or everybody says like, this is the way, it's this way or the highway. Right. So what works with me, like I'm really intentional. I do a lot of things in the morning, but that's something that I need that fills my cup that might not necessarily fill somebody else's cup.
Sure.
Right. We're all different. And I think it's important to understand that, but I believe, again, I believe when we accomplish things, the goals that we set out for ourselves, that's where confidence is built. I also believe, especially with men, when we do things that are quote unquote hard or uncomfortable, there's another layer of confidence that kicks in. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm a huge advocate. I mean, it's really popular today, but it's changed my life, is cold water therapy. So cold plunging. So almost every morning I jump in, I get in the sauna, and then I start my day with a cold plunge.
So you get in the sauna for how long?
20 minutes, 25 minutes. It depends.
So you come out of the sauna at 100 degrees.
Yeah.
And you jump in cold water, 40-degree water?
Yeah, my temperature, I think, set at 44.
44. Yeah. And then how long are you in the water?
It depends. I try to go, sometimes it's a minute, sometimes it's 3 or 4, sometimes it's 5. It depends. But I'd say on average between 1 and 2 minutes. I mean, but I don't want to get in. Let's be clear. I've done this hundreds of times, and every morning I have to talk myself into it. So it's not like I'm so used to it that it's like, oh, this is like, brushing my teeth. No one that does it a lot feels that way, but we do it, and I do it because of the euphoria that comes after. I do it because of the dopamine hit that comes from it. we talk about addiction, which is, when I was going through especially the pain of losing my business and going through that, I mean, I was numbing out on whatever I could possibly find. The pain of all of it was so defeating, debilitating, and I didn't know what to do with it. And of course, in such that horrible mindset that I was at, not horrible is not the right word, in a challenging mindset, limiting belief mindset, just spinning and just searching for things outside of me to make it go away. The reality was it wasn't going away. And I created a lot more pain and suffering that didn't need to be there. So one of my huge whys for where I am today and doing stuff is to help men, especially, lean into what's hard. What we're avoiding, all we're doing is kicking the can down the road, period. So it's have the hard conversations, lean into this, like rip the Band-Aid off. Because if we just slowly pull it away, we're just creating more and more pain in our life, right? So cold water, and again, we're searching outside of us. And like in the science, but looking for the pain to go away. It's the dopamine hit, the dopamine, right? So people want to check out on social media. They want to watch Netflix. I mean, there's an elevated, is the dopamine hits the brain and the brain gets used to that. And so that's why it's hard to pull away from that. Cold water therapy has the same, my belief is, and I don't think I'm misquoting this, but it has the same effect as if someone was doing a line of Coke. Like, Coke has a huge dopamine hit, or sugar. And it's like, but there's not a crash to it. So to me, like one of the things when I quote unquote detoxed off stuff, I will get in the cold water sometimes multiple times a day.
Wow.
And I do it for the emotional side of it. There was one time a couple years ago, I was spinning. I was at my office, not knowing what to do. My heart rate's like at 150 beats a minute from stress.
Wow.
I went back to my house. I got in the cold water for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, my heartbeat went from 150 to 60 beats a minute in 39-degree water. And so, again, uncomfortable. But I knew in that was the solution that would help me, a natural way of doing it versus running to get fast food or going to get something else to numb out on the pain. I went to something natural to regulate that, and it literally brought me back down.
Well, nothing's a pattern interrupt like 43 degrees.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can interrupt your flow. I cold plunge every morning for 4.5 minutes. I've got a song that's 4.5 minutes long, and it's hard for me to say that I crave it, but I sure know the difference when I don't do it. Do you know what I'm saying?
I would argue that you long for the feeling of when you get out.
Yes.
You don't crave when you're in the water. There's not like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Every morning I have to be like, okay, buddy, here we go. And there's this argument happening in my head.
I was just going to ask that. I'm really curious. How does that conversation go? When you're trying to convince yourself to get in there, how does that go?
Oh, it's the same conversation that if you see a hot girl across the room, you want to ask her out, and it's like whatever story you're telling, like, should I go say yes? Should I do this? Should I do this? And like whatever your question, or it's like there's a business deal, and you're like, do I ask this? Do I lean in? Do I say yeah? It's the same thing. It's like the cold water. I'm like, I don't want to get in. Like, you don't want to get in. It's uncomfortable, and I'm trying to talk myself out of it. It's like, I don't need to do it this morning. I'm okay. I did it the last 3 days. I'm still all right. And it's this story. I mean, there's literally times where I've walked into my house. I'm like, I'm not doing it. Or if it's snowing and raining, I'm like, fuck it, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, then I start beating myself up, and I'm like, and then I stop, and I'm like, you're going to have less confidence, and your day won't start off as well because you didn't do it. And trust me, it's not because of the cold water. It's because I committed to myself that I was going to do it.
There it is.
I was just going to say that. Okay, so if we're going to do something hard, and the ice baths are a terrible example for me because to me that's not hard at all. But if we're going to do that, it ultimately comes down to a choice. I said I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do it. There's no argument to be had there. I said I'm going to do this, so therefore this is what it is. That's a big life hack that I have. So we're talking about this stuff, but I found over and over again. You're ultimately going to reach a decision.
You're a unique soul in this area. I want you to know.
Is it relates to the cold water? Or just anything.
He's a professional baseball player. He's a high level athlete. He comes from a long line of suffering. Like this is.
We used to call them ice baths, and we did them every other day, regardless of anything. It was not this. The entire team did it.
It wasn't a mindset.
It wasn't a mindset thing.
It was
the
coach
went. Said, "Get in the tub," and that's what it was.
Well, it's not that way when you have this. I have a horse trough in my backyard, and up until about a week ago, I was cutting out the ice with an axe in the morning. So my neighbors see me out there in my robe and flip-flops in the snow, hacking away. And they're like, oh, there goes the Adamses again. And I'd get in there, and I think it's decreased inflammation in my body. It creates an amazing, after about 40 seconds, I've noticed after 40 seconds, it's miserable. After that, though,
No, once you're in it, you could go, honestly, you could go 20 minutes.
You could,
Like, once you're in
but
it, you're in it.
That's also what we used to do.
That 40
You would go until you were numb. So like the 4 or 5 minutes, that was warming up.
And it just once I've done that, I get out of that. I get out of that water. I go into my house and I do Wim Hof breathing until I bring my core temperature back up. I can't imagine when you say you're getting out of your sauna at 100 degrees and then getting into the water. That has to be a bigger temperature swing than I'm doing. However, my water is outside; it's frozen, so I might.
Yeah, you're at 39, 40, whatever, right?
Whatever
Once
it
you
is.
break it up, yeah.
Yeah, but dang,
The reason I've set mine
a
at
fan.
45 is I've studied more. Like the physical and emotional effects, anything under 50 degrees has the same effect.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, so part of me is like, yeah, I want to do this, but like, I don't need to torture myself.
Don't
The
need to
difference
suffer
between
that
39
much.
and 44, it's like, it's still cold. Like, so I don't need to, that's my own ego saying like, it needs to be at 39 because that's the coldest mine can go. But I think, Topher, what you said is it's important. Like for you, it's like ice baths are no big deal. Right. And there's like, for me, like working out today, right? Like going to the gym, no big deal. I've embodied that. It is who I am. It is part of my day. I don't want to go half the time if I really sit and think about it, but I don't even give myself a choice because I've embodied that's who I am. 5 years ago, I was paying a coach thousands of dollars a month, literally trying to hype me up to be able to have my gym bag ready in the morning to go at 7 a.m., which is comical today. But at the time, it was so emotionally difficult for me to get up and go to the gym. I could work 16 hours a day, but to go to the gym, I wasn't going there, right? Because of all the emotional, unhealthy attachments I had to my worth as it relates to my body, and it felt impossible. But today, it's just part of who I am. It's not hard. There's nothing hard about it. But I've had to embody that, and it takes time. So, one of my favorite sayings is the hard button's the easy button. So we're working out today it's not hard. It's easy. Like the art of going to it, right? And
Choose your hard.
Choose your hard. So again, ice baths for you, same thing. It's like,
Well, it's with anything. The point I was trying to make with that is it's a decision. Somewhere,
It's a choice.
You made a decision that you are going to go to the gym, and that's it. That is what it is. Now, it might have taken you forever to get there. And you got to do that. You had to hire the coach. You had to get the gym bag ready and everything. But at the end of the day, nothing changed until you made the decision of, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get in this cold plunge. I'm going to do it for 45 days straight. Boom. I'm going to do it. Making a decision.
yeah. And I think one thing that I've come to realize with myself, and I find, you just mentioned 45 days, right? Or 75 hard. It's like, you think about if you've been morbidly overweight and the idea of like, I'm going to eat healthy and be perfect for 75 days. The idea of that from day one feels so overwhelming. You don't even know what to do with it. Monumental, right? So what I found that has a lot of success, bring it back on the mindset, is I set goal. Of course, I have long-term, medium-term goals, but most of my goals are set on a daily basis. What am I going to do today? What am I going to do? I can do anything in a day, right? If it's like, if my goal is not to eat a cookie, for example, like, the thought of like, I'm not going to eat cookies for months, like, I'm already subconsciously telling myself I'm going to find myself craving cookies, right? But it's like, no, I'm going to eat a cookie today. I'm not going to eat a cookie today, just today.
Yeah.
Today we're recording this on a Tuesday. So if I woke up this morning, I'm like, I'm not going to eat a cookie on Tuesday, I can do that for a day.
Yeah.
So we could do anything for a day.
Right.
So I think like again, it's the mind. How can we trick ourselves? How can we find ways to like reprogram, change the story? And this comes back to choice. Is there a different way of looking at it? And I think, again, one of the questions you asked what I do is like, I try to be really curious around why I do what I do, especially if I start to fall back into limiting beliefs, or it's like, wait a minute,
Where'd this come from?
where'd this come from?
Where am I feeling it?
So it's having curiosity. So for example, food, even today, if I get triggered, food, the initial thing is food. I mean, it's 40 plus years of that. It doesn't go away overnight,
Yeah.
but it's still there. So there's moments really where I'll catch myself in a trance, and then I'll get to the cupboard, and then I stop, and then I have a conversation with myself. It's like, Adam, is this really what you want?
Yeah.
Are you hungry? So I'm getting curious, and I'm asking myself questions. And the reality is like, I'm just triggered. I have anxious. It's like, is there something else better that's actually going to fill your cup more? Because the truth is, you get in this cycle, we go to addictive behaviors of whatever that happens to be. And we're seeking fulfillment or relief, but it's the cycle. Then we feel guilt and shame around it. Right. That's the cycle of addiction.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just taking the opportunity to pause and get curious. And I have conversations with myself. So, I mentioned earlier, like the conscious and the subconscious side. So I used to belittle that side of it. What I've learned is if we have those negative thoughts that come up, that's telling us we can't do something, or you shouldn't do this, or don't do that. If you're literally telling ourselves like, be quiet, don't do it, you're literally throwing gasoline on the fire.
Right.
And so the way the example I use, what works for me, is the subconscious is like our inner child. So I've actually called him Nuge. It used to be a very derogatory name. Nuge was my high school nickname, right? So to me, it's like it's the teenager, it's the younger version of me. So I literally, in my head, I'm like, all right, Nuge. It's like, I hear you, because kids want to be seen too. So think of that little boy in us, right? That wants to be seen, wants to be heard, especially by mom and dad and others around him. If you acknowledge it, just say, hey, Nuge, I hear you, but that doesn't work for us. So I'm having these conversations, and all of a sudden that voice in my head, that part of me that's pushing me to do something that I know is not going to bring, me fulfillment, it's temporary comfort. I'm actually able to acknowledge that side of me and then bring both the conscious and the subconscious in alignment, and then I'm making conscious decisions. So it's almost like, Nuge, I got you. I've got us.
Yeah.
And I've found that, like, if you acknowledge it, that voice, it wants to be heard. It wants to be seen.
Can we talk more about this? Because I'm practicing this right now. Then Nuge, and I've got my little Robbie over there. Little Robbie will say, well, you've tried this before, and that didn't work. You've tried it. My little voice argues back. You've gone down this road before. Just get the donut. Just get the fucking donut. It's just a donut. It's not that big of a deal. No one will know. Like that little voice. And so like bringing, what I'm asking you is like, I have these conversations. I'm becoming conscious of that. And my goal is to say, all right, Robbie, you know what? I appreciate your opinion. I appreciate where you're coming from. I'm grateful for you, but I got this. Thank you. Like give them the gratitude and move on. Not easy.
No. So let's be clear. It's not easy, right? But it starts with awareness. And the realities of with food, it's like, I'm not perfect with my eating. Like I still slip back. Whatever that happens to be. I just don't beat myself up for it anymore. I don't. And if I pull myself down, I'm able to pull myself out of it quicker. I think that's where true consciousness comes in. No one's going to flip a switch overnight and be a completely different person from one day going forward forever. It doesn't work like that. There has to be grace and understanding that we're going to fall back into old patterns. We're going to fall back into old beliefs, especially if it's a story we've been telling ourselves for our entire life.
Right.
To think that, like, I've been doing this way for 40 some odd years, and all of a sudden the next day I'm just not going to be tempted or want to do all these things. That's not even a reality. And so your donut example, little Robbie wants, no, we're getting the donut. You're going to give in and get the donut. Right.
Yeah.
But the key is of using the donut as an example. It's like, look, over a 6-month period, it's like, let's say that it's been a daily thing for you. You get a donut every day, and all of a sudden you're becoming more conscious and you're having that conversation with yourself. It's like, oh, we only did it 3 times this week. Right. And we were there for a while. Then it's like, oh my gosh, we only did it 2. And then all of a sudden, with time, you're like, oh my God, I don't even think about the donut. Just becomes something that's not there, because as you continue to pull away from it, that's where the magic happens. And that's the hardest part of all of it. It's that initial, like, pulling away from old beliefs and patterns that truly aren't serving us consciously, and trying to up level. It's the pain of embodying that. It's that integration that takes the time.
Seems to me,
and that's where most people get lost.
Well, and I think and you're saying this, what I'm hearing you say is that you have an ability to give yourself grace on the success that you're having, where my inner Robbie, he's a black and white thinker. Like, you either did it or you didn't. You failed or you succeeded. There's no middle ground. And what you're saying is, there's a lot of middle ground. I only had donuts 3 times this week, and that's a huge victory over 7 times in a week, right?
Yeah.
And it's coming to this grace. I think there's an emotional intelligence aligned with that kind of thinking that is something that I am always working on. I'm always working on the gain, staying in the gain rather than the gap. Have you read that book? That's another great book.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it though.
The Gap and the Gain. I live in the gap. Oh man, I did really good today, but I could have done better if I only had 3 donuts this week, but I said I was not going to eat donuts for the rest of the year. It was my resolution. It's like my space that I'm really good at.
So I mentioned earlier, I had a plant medicine experience around this whole thing, right? So again, little Robbie, Nuge, whatever we're going to call it. It's like, and I don't care what the science says. It's whatever. At the end of the day, it's like our mind. I think the irony in this, there's, we talk about people that have schizophrenia. I joke that we all have schizophrenia. They're just saying out loud what we're telling ourselves inside of our head, right? But I had this whole thing around my 13-year-old son, and in the medicine, it was showing like how hard I am on myself and the stories that I tell myself. And it's like, and then it's like showing me, it's like, would you ever talk to your 13-year-old son the way you talk to yourself?
Wow.
And I'm literally in this just crying uncontrollably and just feeling like I would never talk to my son, let alone anyone else in the world, the way I beat myself up around this stuff. Right. So I think when you can, to me, that's why it just resonates with me. When I can look at that side of me is like, my younger version of myself, and it's like, and then actually being able to see like a 12 or 13-year-old version of me, like, Nuge, you got this, buddy.
Yeah.
And then putting the picture of my son, visually seeing my son. Would I ever talk to my son that way? Then why the hell do I talk to myself that way?
That's powerful.
So I think, again, I think you mentioned earlier, one of the things like with your, with your club and everything is talking about, setting intentions and visions and like manifesting and looking at all these things. I think part of that is getting curious. It's looking at things from a different set of lenses, right? There's always two sides to a coin. There's the yin to the yang, and one person can see it one way, one person can see it another. I don't know why this is coming to mind. My boy's mom, so my ex-wife's, both her parents passed away from Parkinson's. They both had Parkinson's. And I remember when her dad passed away, watching my co-parents' family deal with the death of their father who had Parkinson's. And at the same time, I had a client at the time whose husband had Parkinson's and died. And I watched two families that both experienced death right around the same time have completely different experiences around it.
Really?
Completely different experiences. Like and not to say that there wasn't loss and sorrow on other sides of it, right? But I watched one family go into the depths of despair, and it just spiraled out of control, implode. The other family created euphoria, and like they're in a better place. It was the same thing, but their story around the death was very different, even though they both experienced death. Same thing. So it's perspective, right? So I think, again, if we can get curious, if there's something in our life that we don't like, or someone that's showing up, maybe change the story. Just get curious. Like, maybe there's something else to see that I'm not seeing. And I believe if we can get curious, first and foremost, the curiosity slows down the brain. The curiosity helps pull us out of the mindlessness and starts to give us a different perspective to potentially start making more conscious decisions or potentially better decisions that serve us. At the end of the day, whatever story we're telling ourselves around something is what's going to happen, right? So what you feel is like the most, Rob, you might have a story around something that's the most painful thing in the world. You can't believe it, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, like, I could see it from a completely different perspective. It's just my perspective.
Yeah.
Does it make mine better than yours? No. But at the same time, if a lot of pain and suffering that we experience, especially as men, it's the story in our head.
Yeah.
So and all you have to do is,
and again, right? I did a post about this a few weeks ago. It's like, if you want change, it starts with a choice. Period. So we can overcomplicate all the reasons why not, but at the end of the day, it starts with a choice. Again, we overcomplicate everything, and I just think I'm finding in my own life the humor in it. I mean, I truly believe whatever you believe God is, I think God laughs at us a lot. It's like, you guys, like
silly kids.
Like, are you for real, right? You're going to figure this thing out. And I think magic happens when you can start to play with it.
I like the curiosity. I think that's an amazing perspective, because it does. We don't ask ourselves that. I am mad. Why are you mad? I don't know why I'm mad. Like, there's a lot of people that I see every day driving down I-15 who are angry, and I want to ask them, why are you mad? They don't know why they're mad. They haven't slowed down enough to consider all or whatever it is that's cooking. You know what I mean? That's pretty powerful. I like that.
I think one of the, again, we live in a very polarized time of life. Everybody, it's my way or the highway. We've got politics. I mean, social media, there's amazing things with it. And I always get a kick out of watching people try to convince others on political views and so forth. I yet to ever see it happen, but yet I get a kick out of people trying to convince each other their way or the highway, right? So one of the things that I've learned, especially with all the pain and everything I've gone through, is one of the greatest gifts that we get from tragedy or heartbreak or failure or whatever it happens to be, those setbacks, is there's wisdom that comes out of it more than anything, and there's empathy. There's the ability to connect with someone in their pain. And I know that, not that I want to sit and be in someone's pain, but again, just bringing it full circle, we talked about at the beginning, is like when you're in it, you feel like you're alone and you don't understand. Let's take something that's actually really common, is divorce. You've been divorced a couple times. I've been divorced. I used to give advice around divorce to people all the time, and I thought I was nailing it. The truth is, until I went through one, I didn't know shit.
Yeah.
And so my advice to a couple or somebody going through divorce today is so different because I know I've been there.
Yeah.
I can connect with you in that. And I think that's one of my unique offerings in men is like, listen, whatever story you're telling yourself around the pain of whatever you're feeling, trust me, I've been there. I know it. I know what it feels like to be suicidal. I know what it feels like to be morbidly overweight. I know what heartbreak feels like. I know what it feels like to lose a business. I know the highs of highs and the lows of lows and everything in between. And I think that's, again, to be able to connect with that, to let people, hey, you're not alone. Like, and I think that's just a core message that all of us need to realize, that we're never alone, even though we feel like we are. And there's people out there that have been where you've been, that understand what you're going through. And if they've gone through it, you can get through it.
And that's exactly, and when Topher was talking about the group that we're creating and the group that you're creating, it's that very thing. It's that very thing. I was struggling this last week, and I had a chance to talk to Topher and a couple of others in our group, and like really be honest about it, and not like vulnerable, not overly emotional, but like I got to be completely honest in a way that I knew that I could be. And in so doing, that was a tremendous amount of healing, where I think I would have carried this with me a lot longer. Like I was able to work through some shit that was just bringing me down, and I had no place to put it. And sometimes I can put it in Topher's perspective, and the way his brain works is so completely different than mine, and he'll just take it and here you go, and give it right back to you, like break it down in a way that just makes sense to him, and it's a new perspective. And Alec has a completely different perspective than I do. It's stunningly different, but amazingly eye-opening, and he is able to deliver the message clearly. And I just love the idea that I have a group of a tribe of brothers that I can rely on, because life is hard enough, and if we're doing it on our own, it's even harder.
Oh, yeah. Women figured this out a long time
They're
ago.
so smart in this area.
Listen, they're open up. They share shit. It's just like, and they figure that out. It's like your person, or my girlfriend can go, she could be in a bad space, goes with her girlfriends, comes back, I'm great.
Yeah.
And it's
and
like,
they don't even mess around. Like, I've heard my wife on the phone. She'll call up. She'll say to her girlfriend, hey, how you doing? And the girlfriend will say, I'm doing it. And they just go. They're in it. There's no like you and I need to hang out. We need to talk about like 20 minutes of bullshit before we have not that long. Actually, you and I are pretty quick that way, but most of us I got to hang out with you for like a week on a boat. And then after that, we can actually like, oh, okay, I see you over there. You're a man just like me. You got these things. And it's how do these women do it? It's a weird thing. I'm thinking more about your question. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know why we put these walls up as men.
Well, no, I think society pressures. And I think it goes back. And again, how old are you, Topher?
33.
Oh yeah, you're
Baby.
a baby. A baby. Not really. I'm 46. So, but generational things change, right? And it's like, to be able to open up about this stuff. And I just think of even my closest friends for years growing up. I mean, we never really got deep. We talked about surface stuff, made fun of each other, a lot of guys do. And but did we ever get really, really deep? Not that often.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, or to get there is like, this is uncomfortable. I'm not going there. And like, I am so not interested in relationships with anyone today that doesn't want to go deep. Like, I'm fine doing the surface thing for a minute, but if I want to spend my time with someone, I want to spend my time with people that actually want to go there and feel comfortable with that. And I actually want to be a catalyst for that. Again, this whole thing that I think is really important, it's a really big part of my message, is that you're not alone in your suffering and in your pain. I mean, everybody's different, and we look at success different ways and so forth, but where we are all the same is we all have insecurities. We all have, shame, guilt. We all mess up. We all have that. And if we can create a safe container and to actually talk about it, and that it's okay, and not only talk about it, right? I mean, there's a lot of push around being vulnerable. I mean, vulnerability can be a superpower, which I truly believe it is, but it's like, once you're open, now what do you do with it? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, I've been a shit show, or I messed up here and messed up that. Okay, great. Now make actionable steps to move forward. When my whole thing with my business, came public and was all over the press and was everywhere, I mean, I was a shit show with it, and I didn't know what to do. And I finally had this impression, I'm like, I need to actually talk about this. I hadn't talked about it with anyone. The community's talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. So I finally went on social, and I just shared my story and literally took radical accountability, gave more of kind of a little bit overview from my perspective. I talked about being suicidal. I was scared to death to be that vulnerable, petrified, literally shaking. I hit submit or whatever. I went for a walk. I'm like, and of course, in my head, I'm imagining that, investors have lost money in the deal. I'm getting lambasted. I'm getting destroyed. I'm hearing all these things. And literally, it was hundreds and hundreds of text messages, DMs, voicemails of just empathy, of love. And the most surprising thing of all of it, with literally tears streaming down my eyes, was reading messages from men, many that I didn't even know. You saved my life today. Thank you for being brave. I'm not alone. Over and over, different messages around that. And it's like, again, we as men suffer in silence, and we don't need to. and there's power. And again, you don't necessarily need to do what I do and go on social and bear it all there, but there are people, there are people, there are resources, there are groups that you can go to lean into, and you're going to realize really quickly that you're not alone. So especially if you're in that dark place, I mean, please reach out. I didn't know at the time, and I isolated myself, and I know I could have moved through it. And I think some ways I was lucky, right?
Yeah.
That I didn't succumb to that, because it was close, really close.
I don't want to take away from that, because I know that is the truth, but I also feel like I don't have men that I can celebrate my victories with. Most of the time when I have a victory, it's because I just beat you at something. That's not a shared victory. There's no place that I can go to and be like, guess what happened this week? I just had the best whatever. Like, I made these contacts, I set this deal, I did this thing, and have men that are actually like, hell yeah, buddy, good job. Like that's amazing in a way that it's meaningful more than it's so competitive. I can get competition anywhere, all over the place. I can go to my office, there's competition oozing out of the walls. I want to go somewhere sometimes that someone's like, hey, that's kind of amazing that you did that. Good job. Because I want that shot in the arm. That little Robbie still really values.
Oh yeah, we want to be seen. Men want to be seen.
Yeah. Thank you.
We
That's
want to
what
be
I'm trying
seen.
to say.
We want to be seen. I don't call it ego, call it whatever you want. I think it's part of us. Yeah, we want to be seen. I want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
I want
A good job.
Yeah,
A
I
hell
want to
yeah.
hear like, I want to attaboy.
Yeah.
Like, you got this,
Yeah.
right? And just, it's interesting. Like, I've always been one that gives a lot, and like, and I always used to say, like, I give without expecting anything in return. The truth is, like, if I give and give and give, and someone doesn't even say thank you, like, it's interesting. Like, I build resentment around that.
Yeah.
Like, all I need, so now it's like, all I need is a thank you. I mean, I'm not going to necessarily say that, but if someone continues to show you a pattern of like a lack of appreciation for something you're continuing to do, I've found myself, owning my part, like, I actually build resentment around that.
Yeah.
But it's just like a simple thank you. Oh my God. Like, I'm melting. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Bills
thank
paid.
you.
Bills paid. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I hear you on that, because I think it can be considered, I think it just depends on the circle, right? Because I love celebrating people's success. I love seeing people win, but there's a lot of people that don't.
Yeah.
And I think even I think a lot of times, like, even my world, the coach world, is like a big part of what I do is even just accountability, right? So I think a lot of the wins that we have, right, you want to celebrate a lot of those, because if you back into it, that maybe people don't know about it, is like, you might have said, I had 3 sales this week, but what you didn't realize is, like, in your real estate business, but in order to get those 3 sales, it required, 10 centers of influence meetings, and it required 50 phone calls or whatever, right? And it's like, you did all the work, and the sales were a byproduct of the time you spent. So to me, you want to celebrate the wins, but a lot of times it's like, let's celebrate what it took to get there.
Powerful. That's powerful. Thank you.
And so
Thank you for that. I needed to hear that today.
So I think, like, accountability, right? I mean, in professional sports, right? In base, it's like the focus is like what happens on game day, right? But it's like, we were talking about earlier, it's the 20-minute ice bath. It's all the work that leads into that actually leads to the success. And so much emphasis is on the home run, the base hit, the grand slam, whatever it is. But it's like, it's the preparation and all the time that went into that. That is like the ultimate prize, if you will. But like, it's the work is what's done behind the scenes that nobody sees.
Nobody knows that baseball players show up at noon for a 7 o'clock start. Half the baseball game is this big in the whole picture of everything. And life is what you're saying, spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on. It's everything else that nobody else sees.
Powerful stuff. Well, listen, Adam, we've talked about a lot of things. I want to spend some time focusing on burn up. How can we men get involved? How can we support you best in growing this? Because everything you're talking about in creating the accountability and the coaching and the celebrating of the successes is, I think, necessary. It's lacking in our culture right now. How can we get behind that and support you in this?
No, thank you. I think ultimately, again, I think society, especially with men, is like, we feel like certain things are unachievable, right? Especially when we've had losses or different things, like, I'm never going to have this, right? Or my whole identity is tied to a business or tied to a marriage or tied to whatever, right? And I think the biggest thing that I want to do for men is empower them to, like, realize that, like, you can have everything you possibly want. Everything's inside of you. It's actually not outside of you. The whole thing of like, I want to go buy a lottery ticket to win the millions. Like, no, you are the lottery ticket, right? If you want to get in shape, the thing I love about physical fitness and my own physical journey and why I have so much pride in it is, like, you can't buy it. Like, I don't care what anyone says. Like, you have to earn it. Like, anyone that's in shape that walks into a room, it's like they've earned it. And I don't care if they're on hormones, steroids, it doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, there's still a ton of work that went into that.
Right.
And that's the same with success, and same with anything. Is it's like there is no free lunch. There is no quick fix. We're all searching for the quick fix, the quick fad, the quick this, right?
Magic pill.
Yeah. And so my whole thing is transformation. Like, it's embodying it. It's like, if you want true change, if you want to really elevate every aspect of your life, it's going to require radical transformation, and it's going to require radical behavioral changes. It's inevitable. Otherwise, you're not going to get what you want. And so, like, my whole premise in working with men is like to lean into that, and it's to be like, and I can't do it for them. And that's the beautiful thing. I think the greatest coaches in the world can be a guide and can show them. It's like, I've been there and can path, but ultimately it's that a coach can help lead the people they're working with back to themselves to come up with their own conclusion. And they need to, because at the end of the day, Robert, if you and I are working together in a coaching arrangement and I'm saying, go do this, go do this, go do this, like, yeah, you might get some success for that. But at the end of the day, it's like, if you don't believe it, and if you're not embodying it, nothing's going to happen.
I think what's more is that, and you've touched on this, is you had to hit a point where you have to decide what you want. I could say, yeah, I'm getting coaching and I'm doing the thing, but there was a point where you were like, you ordered that extra food and you realized this isn't what I want. As we come to that place as men, and you're creating a runway for them to discover what it is they do want. That's what coaching is, right? What is it that's really important to you, Adam? Who is Adam? What does that mean? How is it going to work? How are you going to apply this and grow this? I love that you're creating that space that you can help them, because you've been down that road. You've rung the bell, buddy. If there's been something to do, tremendous weight loss to loss of wealth to loss of marriage, and I'm not trying to focus on the negative things, but you've overcome those things.
But the thing is, that's important, is like, that wasn't necessarily, I didn't need to get to 350 pounds before getting in shape. That was a choice. I didn't need to get divorced to learn to actually take a radical accountability. Unfortunately, it took very traumatic experiences in my life in order for me to kind of snap out of the trance, or whatever you want it to be, right?
Right.
So one of my biggest intentions is like, it doesn't need to get as bad as I experienced it. Part of it's like, I don't want anyone to go through what I went through, right? But at the end of the day, if you're, for example, in an unfulfilled marriage that's just coasting, and you're not willing to own your shit in it because you're a common denominator, and I'm talking to the men right now, and you want to point your finger at your wife and she's not doing this like this, you're not having sex, you're not having intimacy, trust me, you are the problem.
Yeah.
Period.
They
Yes,
don't
does
feel
she
safe.
play a role? Yes,
Yep.
but so do you.
Yep.
And so you can keep telling yourself the same story and keep doing the same thing. And while you might not get divorced today, one or two things are going to happen. You're going to continue to live be in an unfulfilled relationship in perpetuity, or your marriage will come to an end. End of story. There is no happy ending to it either way.
Right.
And unfortunately, people are okay just being I'm not interested in men or working with anyone, frankly, that's okay just coasting. Like, I'm actually done with it. And there's people in my life that are just coasting, like, that have been close. Like, I'm out. Like, I don't want that in my life. I see you, you do you. But if you say you're going to do something or you want something, then go after it. Like, I'll be right there with you. But I'm not interested in coasting. I'm not interested in half-ass. I'm not interested in living a mediocre life, or having people in my life that want to live a mediocre life. I want to live an elevated life, and realize that, like, it requires radical accountability and radical change. And again, it's super easy to point a finger at everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, it's like, I'm interested. Men have to be able to make a choice and actually look in the mirror. It's like, you know what? I'm the problem.
Yeah.
I'm not making the money I'm making because of decisions I have made and continue to make.
Yeah.
Period. Now let's go forward.
Yeah. And I'm done with it. I'm over it. I don't want to do this anymore. I've gotten what I've gotten, doing what I've done. Now what? Now what do I need to do to improve?
Exactly. So it's like, and so this is my belief. So much of what's holding all of us back from whatever we want in life, again, bringing it full circle, is our mind. What are the stories we're telling ourselves? So much of this is learning mind hacks and tricks to be able to trick and reprogram the way we tell the stories we tell ourselves. It's a mindset game. Mindset affects all of it.
Yeah.
And once you get that in line, everything else starts to fall in place. It's fascinating. And so to me, I mean, I'm a mindset coach as much as anything, and it's to help people not let the limiting beliefs hold them back. And trust me, I get it. And it's not like I'm perfect at this by any means. I have my own limiting beliefs. I have my own stories. But part of my whole why is like, wait a minute, I don't want to be a hypocrite in a way. Like, hey, I want people to say, do as I do, not what I say.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to live that. And I think part of my why, and part of what really pushes me to really excel and build this, is because I have something to prove to myself first and foremost. And I want to show people and show men specifically that's like, you can have extreme travesty and loss, yet still have everything you possibly want. It's not, it's not the finish line. It's just the start of a new chapter.
Yeah. Yep. And let's build on it. Let's
Yeah.
not beat ourselves up over it. Let's build upon it and see where it takes us. So you have the burn up coaching. You said you do men's retreats as well?
Yeah. So we've got, burnup.com is where people can find out, they can schedule time with me. They can follow me on social. It's just Adam Nugent or Burnup. I post most of my stuff just on my personal account. I do have a retreat coming up here soon. I'm not quite sure when this is going to air, but mid-April, I'm actually doing an ayahuasca retreat in Costa Rica.
Wow.
So only for 20 people, I've assembled an incredible team of shamans and facilitators. This will be an experience like no other. Again, I'm a huge advocate for plant medicine. It's been a great tool that has literally transformed my life. I always say there's life before ayahuasca and there's life after.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge advocate for plant medicine when it's done in the right setting, when you've got the right people, when you've got the right intentions in place. And so a lot of intentions gone into curate an incredible space of healing, of growth, of awareness.
In August?
Yeah, it's in April.
In
April. So that's coming up. We'll have some other ones coming up. Also coming up here, and I'm not quite sure when this is going to air, but here in the next few weeks, I'm also launching, I've been doing one-on-one coaching, which will continue to do that, but I'm also launching a group men's coaching platform that will have people from all over the country can be a part of this. We'll have monthly get-togethers for those that are here locally in Utah, and we're going to build a community, but then create a very safe place to really help people level up. And kind of going back to what you said, Rob, is like, I want a group of men that like I can go to, like you guys have here in your club, that like you can help build each other up and hold each other accountable, because I believe in accountability big time. And sometimes we need an accountability partner. Sometimes we need someone to help us hold us accountable. I mean, ultimately, in a perfect world, it's like I can hold myself accountable, but let's be real. That isn't always the case.
Right. You don't want to get in that cold water this morning. You talk yourself out of that.
Yeah.
It's
like, Rob, but it's like, me, like you're my accountability partner. And I tell you the night before, I'm getting in the pool, I'm getting in the cold water, and I don't want to do it the next day. Two things are going to happen. One, Adam, you told yourself, but two, it's like, no, I told Rob.
Yeah.
And I know I got a call with Rob later today, and I don't want to let him down.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
Not even let you down. I don't want to let myself down by telling you that I didn't do it.
There it is. That's the
That's really
sauce.
what it comes down
That's
to.
the sauce right there. Well, I love that. And ladies and gentlemen, as you listen to the American Masterminds and you listen to Adam and some of the principles that we've covered here, we've talked about in other podcasts, and this is an theme that comes again and again: the high accountability. What can I do now? What's the one most important thing I can do that'll move the needle the most?
Choosing your hard.
Choosing your hard.
I love that.
It seems like we have this theme that's coming up
Yes.
again and again. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, 100%.
And I really love it because it does speak to the commonality of the condition, of life and the journey that we're on as men. And I love that you are doing this and you're heading in that way. I would love to be a part of whatever it is you're doing, Adam. I find you, and I always have admired you, but I find what your journey is now is amazing, and that rebirth that you're experiencing now is wonderful to witness. And so appreciate you sharing that with us. The last question that I want to throw in there, unless you have something else, is where do you see the Burn Up program going in the next year or two? What do you want out of this?
Yeah, what I want more than anything is I want this to be a movement, right? My tagline is freedom is in the fire. I want it to become almost like freedom's in the fire, right? It's almost something we tell each other, freedom's in the fire, go for it. Burn up, right? Lean into it, right? I want when we're faced with challenges to come to mind. It's like, oh, I saw Adam do this, or there's other men that are doing this, and kind of leaning into that. So Burn Up, the coaching, I want to continue to grow, the community I want to build in that. Another big thing that I will be bringing on later this year is, again, my health and wellness journey has been such a big part of who I am. And I think so much of our confidence is rooted in how we feel physically.
Oh yeah.
Right. And again, having experienced both ends of the spectrum, like how we fuel our body and do stuff, and getting my hormones and everything in check has been a huge part of my journey. And so I intend to open a wellness center that's going to have a hormonal clinic on it. It'll also have the spirituality side of it and have hot and cold therapy that people can go do too. We'll have yoga, sound bath. It's going to incorporate literally true wellness. That's going to cover both the physical, mental, spiritual, all the aspects of the mental side of it, and bring it all together in just a very beautiful, healing, experiential place that can kind of culminate and bring it all together.
Wow.
So my intention is to kind of bring that online, but it's all around health and wellness and the betterment of who we are as individuals. And I just feel like as one person levels up, others around us level up, and people will meet you there. And I think especially for those that are in marriages, or men that I'm talking to the men now. It's like, if you level up, if you show up more often than not, you said this earlier, Rob, your partner, your wife will meet you there.
Yes.
Or exceed you almost always.
Yeah, but they'll meet you. They're craving it and they're longing for it to show up and man up and be the best version of yourself. And everything you want, from intimacy, from connection to success, will go through the roof when you can actually finally take the decision, right, to look at your mirror, own your shit, and step into that. Because it's uncomfortable, but if you step into that, everything you want's on the other side of that uncomfortableness. Again, freedom's in the fire.
Freedom's in the fire. You're not alone. You're not alone, Ben. Gentlemen, we're all in this journey together. If you are not aligned with American Masterminds or a burn-up program, get aligned. Find your tribe. Men, this is as important as good nutrition, good rest, and exercise. Mental health is a huge issue among men right now. The suicide rates are ridiculous. The feeling alone has always been a thing among men, and I just really want to give that shout out, a call to action. If you're listening to this, gentlemen, find your tribe.
Yes.
And it could be in the RC club. It could be in a motorcycle club. It could be anything, but find a group of dudes doing something that you're interested in, lean into it, and make those connections, because you're not alone, but you have to make an effort to not be that way.
And I think a simple thing, go on Facebook and I'm looking for men that I can build a tribe with. Anyone interested? I mean, it could be that simple. You'd be shocked at how many people will reach out.
They'll raise their hands.
Men are longing for this.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's something that's needed right now. So thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for being our guest today. We're very
It's
grateful.
an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please like it, share it, subscribe, become a fan of the American Masterminds, become a fan and follow our friend Adam and his journey. You said that you're starting a podcast of your own.
Yeah, it should be launching here in the next few weeks.
And so keep your eyes out for that. Follow him on social media and be part of a tribe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.